Senator, how are you?
Laura, always great to be with you, and Texas will be glad to have you tomorrow.
Yeah, we're going to have a good time there. And you heard it from Michael Steele. Republicans are getting themselves in a box. They're going to look like they don't care. And with 90% of the public supporting universal background checks, Republicans look terrible, he says, in not allowing a debate on this or filibustering this.
Well, I think there are a lot of people that are throwing rocks. We are obviously having a debate on this. I think having a debate on this is important. I'd be happy to spend the next 3 weeks debating the right policies to stop violent criminals and to punish violent criminals, which is what we should be doing, and at the same time to protect the rights, the constitutional rights of law-abiding citizens. The question is not whether we have a debate, because that's what we're doing right now. The question is whether it should be a 50-vote threshold or 60-vote threshold. And in my view, for any legislation that is potentially infringing the Bill of Rights, taking away our constitutional protections, I think it should be a 60-vote threshold, and that's what I and a number of other senators are asking for, is a 60-vote threshold, and we're insisting upon that.
John McCain on Sunday spoke out on this filibuster.
You'd encourage Republicans not to filibuster.
I would not only encourage it, I don't understand it.
Well, he said, I don't understand it. It makes no sense. You guys don't want to debate. He said, what are you afraid of, Senator Cruz?
I can't help what others understand or don't. I have been actively debating this issue for weeks, dealing with it in the Senate Judiciary Committee. Let me give you an example of the disconnect. There's a lot of rhetoric. There are a lot of the administration is, I think, really playing on emotions. But what they're not focused on is actual policies that will stop violent crime. I mean, you've got the horrific tragedy in Newtown, which the administration is, I think, trying to take advantage of. But let me give you an example of the sorts of policies we ought to be talking about, which is that the Obama Justice Department has not made it a priority to prosecute felons who try to illegally purchase guns. In 2010, there were roughly over 15,000 felons and fugitives who tried to illegally purchase guns. Of those 15,000, the Obama Justice Department prosecuted only 44. Out of 15,000 felons and fugitives who tried to illegally buy a gun, the Obama Justice Department only prosecuted 44. I think that's completely unacceptable. I think we need to be devoting law enforcement resources to prosecuting violent felons who are trying to get guns. But instead of doing that, what they're trying to do is pass laws that would take away the constitutional rights of law-abiding citizens. And I think that's the wrong approach. I think it's a political approach. It's not designed to fix the problem of stopping violent criminals from committing horrific crimes.
The Wall Street Journal today published an editorial criticizing your planned filibuster with a number of other Republicans. And in this piece, it's argued that the filibuster gives cover to Senate Democrats, and if you want to prove your gun control bona fides, the best way to do this is to debate the merits and vote on the floor. You can always filibuster the final bill if you want to, but it makes no sense to paint yourselves into a political box canyon before even knowing what they're voting on.
Laura, I got to say, I think the criticism has been silly. The critics have said we need to have a debate, we need to have a vote. We are having a debate, and we're going to have a vote. We're going to have a vote on cloture tomorrow, and we are debating it. The only question is, what should the vote threshold be for legislation that would violate potentially the Bill of Rights? I think it should be a minimum of 60 votes. And I'll point out a lot of the Republicans who are saying that they are happy to vote to shut off debate and move to the bill, they don't even know what the bill contains. I mean, it's reminiscent of Nancy Pelosi talking about Obamacare, saying we have to pass it to find out what's in it. The bill that these Republicans are going on television saying we got to move to and vote on, they still don't know the details because the Democrats haven't released the details of the bill that they're moving to proceed to.
Well, the details of the Pat Toomey, Pennsylvania Republican senator, libertarian, Pat Toomey and kind of a moderate Democrat from West Virginia, Joe Manchin, their compromise that they've come up with, it would be an amendment to the bill. Apparently, Senator Cruz, it would mean that fewer gun buyers would be included in the expanded background checks, but it will allow for record keeping of names of gun buyers that many Republicans obviously oppose. They're announcing this today.
They are, and Pat is a good man. I don't agree with this particular proposal. And you put your finger on what is at the heart of this push for what's called universal background checks. And this is what the Democrat talking point is they want universal background checks, and they say 90% of the American people support it. What they don't point out is, and what this is all about, is requiring the government to approve any private transfer, at least the Chuck Schumer broader version, is any private transfer of a firearm between private citizens. The biggest problem, and it's a problem that's also true with the so-called compromise bill coming out today, is that the Justice Department has explained the only way to enforce universal background checks is for the federal government to maintain a gun registry, a list of every firearm that is in the possession of every American across this country. And in my view, maintaining a federal gun registry raises very serious constitutional concerns, is not consistent with the Second Amendment, and it has historically been the predicate for gun taxation, gun regulation, and ultimately gun confiscation. I think that's what this fight is all about. It's really unfortunate to see politicians not focusing on let's prosecute the felons and fugitives who are trying to illegally buy guns, which would actually go towards crime and stopping violent crime, but instead trying to use this as an excuse to set the stage for a national gun registry. And I think we should vigorously protect the liberties in the Bill of Rights. And that, to my mind, is what this fight is fundamentally about, and at the same time focusing on stopping violent crime.
The President of the United States went to Connecticut, my home state, this week, and gave an impassioned plea for gun control measures, and he highlighted, of course, the tragedy in Newtown and clearly set up this political battering ram that's going to be used in 2014, Senator Cruz, in the midterms, if indeed this gun control is resisted and defeated in the Senate or beyond. And he kept invoking the children. If there's one child's life that you can save, why wouldn't you? How could you stand in the way?
Some folks back in Washington are already floating the idea that they may use political stunts to prevent votes on any of these reforms.
He went on to say, think about that. They're not just saying they'll vote no. They're saying they'll do everything they can to even prevent any votes on these provisions. And the boos then, of course, came out of the arena. People, boo, boo, we want to vote, screaming.
Well,
are you worried about the political implications of this, Senator?
To be honest, I am not. I think the president has shown that he is willing to demagogue an issue, and I think it is ultimately going to backfire politically. In fact, in my view, as a result of their onslaught on the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms, I think there's going to be a very significant political consequence in 2014. I think as a result of this fight that President Obama is picking, I think the stage is set for Republicans to take control of the United States Senate because of this fight right now, because of coming after the right to keep and bear arms of peaceful, law-abiding Americans. I think a number of red state Democrats who are up for re-election in 2014 are going to lose their seats. And I think they should. You know, if you go back to 1994, you read Bill Clinton's autobiography, he describes, in his opinion, the reason Republicans took control of the House in 1994 was because of the assault weapons ban passed that year. It was the same issue where liberals decided they were going to go after the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms, and the American people said, enough already. Don't violate our constitutional rights. And the result was there was a real political consequence to be paid. You know, I think it's striking when the president is going there and using horrific images of young children horribly murdered.
Is it exploitation, Senator? Is this the exploitation by the Democrats of the horrific deaths of children?
I think it is certainly taking advantage of a terrible tragedy. And Laura, my wife and I, we've got 2 little girls. I mean, you can't see what happened in Newtown and not be utterly horrified and speechless at the depravity of this deeply troubled young man who would senselessly murder 20 young kids. I mean, it is unspeakable.
So you know what they're going to do, Senator? They're going to say, you say you care. You got up at the State of the Union when universal background checks were mentioned. People got up and everyone applauded. But then you guys in the end don't really care about the slaughtered kids. You know that's the game they're going to play. They played it with health care reform, with the kids, with the mothers with cancer. They played it on immigration. They continue to use it in immigration. They use the children every time as a battering ram against Republicans. I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, no, they certainly do. But you know what? I think someone in Connecticut, while the president is trying to take advantage of this horrific tragedy, should have asked, Mr. President, if you're so concerned about violent crime, why is your Justice Department not prosecuting felons and fugitives who try to illegally buy guns? Out of 15,000 felons and fugitives in 2010 who tried to illegally buy a gun, your Justice Department prosecuted only 44. That's where the inquiry should be on violent criminals, but they don't want to talk about violent criminals. Instead, they're exploiting this tragedy to try to restrict the constitutional rights of law-abiding citizens, and I think that's wrong.
Well, I think as this new Washington Post ABC poll showed, a CNN poll showed yesterday, most Americans disapprove of how President Obama has handled gun policy issues. Fascinating. Senator Cruz, we really appreciate it. Best of luck in the filibuster. We'll be watching.